They laughed when the poor little girl entered the fancy restaurant with the baby in her arms, until she saved the young billionaire from a heart attack. The rain beat hard against the windows of the Golden Spoon restaurant when the door opened with a creak. The cold wind swept in, along with a small drenched figure. Sylvie was 5 years old, but she looked smaller. Her blonde hair stuck to her wet face, and her bare feet left damp marks on the gleaming floor. In her thin arms, she carried a baby wrapped in a blanket that had seen better days. The warmth of the restaurant hit her like an embrace. The smell of French fries and grilled steak made her stomach rumble loudly. She swallowed hard and took a few timid steps inside. The conversation stopped. 30 pairs of eyes turned to the wet little girl. Some customers frowned, others whispered among themselves, pointing discreetly. "My goodness, where did that child come from?" murmured a woman with grey hair. "Where are her parents?" asked a man in a suit, shaking his head. Sylvie pretended not to hear. She held her brother tighter to her chest and looked for an empty corner where she could hide. Maybe no one would bother her if she stayed very still, but the manager was already walking toward her. He was a short, pudgy man with a stained white apron and a far from friendly expression. "Hey, you," he called out, his voice cutting through the silence. "You can't stay here. Please, leave." Sylvie looked down. Her cheeks turned red with shame. When she spoke, her voice was weak. "We just wanted a warm place and a little bit of food." The manager crossed his arms. "Leave now, girl. This isn't a shelter." Some people laughed softly. A woman pointed with her finger, commenting something to her husband and shaking her head in disapproval. "And what a shame," she murmured. "Where are the people responsible for them?" At a table in the back, a man in his early 40s watched everything with irritation. Russell Morrison was having a terrible day at work, and the last thing he wanted was drama in a restaurant. He just wanted to eat his lasagna in peace and go home. He huffed and went back to stirring his food, trying to ignore the scene. The manager took a step toward Sylvie. "Get out now!" It was at that moment that something strange happened. Russell felt a sharp pain in his chest. At first, it was just discomfort, as if he had eaten too quickly. But the pain grew, spreading down his left arm and up to his neck. He clutched his chest and tried to breathe. The air wouldn't come. All the color drained from his face. Beads of cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Russell leaned forward, desperate for air. A waiter noticed and approached him. "Sir, are you all right?" Russell tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come out. He shook his head, his eyes wide with fear. The pain was unbearable now, as if someone were squeezing his heart with a giant hand. His legs gave out. Russell collapsed from his chair and fell to the floor with a dull thud. The restaurant erupted in panic. Chairs scraped, people screamed, plates fell to the floor. "Someone call an ambulance! He's having a heart attack! Get out of the way, let him breathe!" But amidst all the chaos, the manager kept yelling at Sylvie, "Get out now!" The girl wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the man trembling on the floor. Something stirred inside her, a memory of her mother, of the things she used to say. "Please, can someone hold my brother?" she asked in a trembling voice. For a few seconds, no one reacted. Everyone was too busy yelling or watching the commotion. Then an elderly lady stood up silently and took the baby from Sylvie's arms. "Go on, child," she whispered. "Do what you have to do." Sylvie ran to Russell and knelt beside him. The man was turning blue, his eyes rolling back. She pressed her ear to his broad chest and heard a heart struggling to beat. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "When someone isn't breathing, you try, even if no one helps you." Her mother had been a nurse before she got sick. She had taught Sylvie some basic things, playing doctor at home. 1, 2, 3. She began to count, performing compressions on Russell's chest. The room fell silent. Even the people who had been screaming stopped to watch the impossible scene, a 5-year-old girl trying to save a stranger's life. Sylvie's small hands worked with determination. She knew she had to press hard, right in the middle of his chest. Each compression hurt her thin arms, but she didn't stop. 4, 5, 6. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice remained steady. She thought of her mother, of all the people her mother had helped at the hospital. Now it was her turn. 10, 11, 12. Outside, sirens were approaching. Someone had called for emergency services. But Sylvie didn't stop. She kept counting, kept pressing, kept fighting. The restaurant door burst open. 2 paramedics rushed in, carrying heavy equipment. One of them knelt beside the child and stared, dumbfounded. "Who started CPR?" he asked, impressed. "I did," Sylvie answered, her voice choked with exhaustion and emotion. The paramedic looked at her with respect. "Oh, so you saved his life, little one." They took over, connecting wires and applying electric shocks. Russell's body jumped on the makeshift gurney, once, twice. On the 3rd try, he opened his eyes, confused and weak. Russell tried to understand where he was. He saw the restaurant lights, the worried faces, the medical equipment, and then he saw Sylvie. The girl was standing beside the gurney, her face stained with tears, her hands still trembling from the effort. She watched him with huge, worried eyes. Russell tried to speak, but his throat was dry. With great effort, he managed to whisper, "Thank you." The paramedics placed him on a proper stretcher and prepared to leave. As he was carried to the ambulance, Russell couldn't take his eyes off the girl. Who was she? Why had she risked everything to save him? The ambulance doors closed with a metallic thud. The sirens started up again, taking Russell away from the girl who had changed his life forever. Inside the restaurant, Sylvie took her brother back in her arms. The manager had vanished, probably too ashamed to continue yelling at her. A few people approached, wanting to thank her or ask questions, but Sylvie was tired, so very tired. She walked to the door, hugged the baby to her chest, and stepped back out into the cold rain. She didn't know she had just planted the seed of something much bigger than she could imagine. Sometimes the greatest new beginnings are born from the smallest gestures, and sometimes saving one life can save 2. Russell woke up with a bitter taste in his mouth and a dull ache in his chest. The hospital lights were too white, almost offensive. He blinked several times, trying to get his bearings. Where was he? What had happened? Slowly, the memories returned. The restaurant, the terrible pain, the cold floor against his face, and then a small girl, kneeling beside him, pressing on his chest with tiny hands. He tried to move, but the wires connected to his body reminded him he wasn't free to leave. A monitor beside the bed emitted constant beeps, marking every beat of his heart. "You're finally awake," said a familiar voice. Russell turned his head slowly. Harris, his personal assistant, was sitting in a blue plastic chair with a look of concern he rarely showed. "Harris," Russell's voice came out hoarse. "What time is it?" 3 in the morning. You've been unconscious for almost 6 hours. Russell tried to recall more details, but his mind was foggy. He felt strange, as if floating between sleep and wakefulness. "What did the doctors say?" Harris leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "They want to talk to you now that you're awake. I'll go get Dr. Peterson." A few minutes later, a grey-haired man entered the room. He wore a pristine white lab coat and carried a clipboard full of papers. "Mr. Morrison's," the doctor said, pulling up a chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like a truck ran over me," Russell replied, trying to smile. Dr. Peterson didn't smile back. His expression was serious, professional. "Mr. Morrison, you suffered a severe heart attack. Your arteries are blocked and the heart muscle was damaged." Russell felt a cold knot in his stomach. "Damaged how?" "You're going to need intensive care and profound changes to your lifestyle. A strict diet, moderate exercise, daily medication, and no stress." The doctor paused, observing Russell's reaction. "If it weren't for the immediate resuscitation you received, you probably wouldn't be here talking to me." Immediate resuscitation. The words echoed in Russell's mind. He remembered the girl again, her big, frightened eyes, her small hands working tirelessly. "Doctor," he said, his voice still weak. "Who brought me here?" "The paramedics. They said a child started the emergency procedures before they arrived." A wave of gratitude mixed with something he couldn't identify washed over Russell. That tiny girl had saved his life. To a complete stranger, who didn't even know his name. Dr. Peterson continued talking about medications and procedures, but Russell was barely listening. His mind was back at the restaurant, reliving those final moments before he passed out. The girl was being kicked out by the manager. She had only asked for a warm place and some food. And yet, when he was dying, she didn't hesitate to help. "Mr. Morrison," the doctor brought him back to reality, "are you listening to me?" "Sorry, doctor. Could you repeat that?" "I said you'll be hospitalized for at least 3 days. We need to monitor your condition and adjust the medications." When the doctor left, Russell was alone with Harris. Silence hung between them for a few minutes. "Harris," Russell said finally, "do you know anything about the child who helped me?" Harris frowned. "Child?" "A little girl, 5 years old, maybe. Blonde hair, was carrying a baby." "Ah, yes, the paramedics mentioned her." Russell shifted in the bed, ignoring the pain in his chest. "So, did you find out who she is?" Harris shook his head. "I tried talking to the restaurant staff, but no one could give me any information. They said she appeared out of nowhere and disappeared the same way." "What do you mean, disappeared?" "After the ambulance left, she took the baby and left. No one saw where she went." Russell felt a pang of something that wasn't physical pain. It was worry. Such a small girl, alone on the street with a baby, on a cold and rainy night. "Who is that child?" he asked, more to himself than to Harris. "She's gone. No one knows her name or where she lives." Harris's answer left him uneasy. How could a child just disappear? Where were her parents? Why was she on the street? Harris noticed Russell's worried expression. "Boss, you need to rest." The doctor was very clear about avoiding stress. But Russell couldn't relax. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the girl's face. The determination in her eyes as she knelt beside him. The courage of a child who had nothing, yet still gave everything she could to save a stranger. He felt ashamed. Here he was, a successful businessman, and he had been saved by a street kid, a child he hadn't even really noticed until he was dying. What kind of person did that make him? Russell had always prided himself on being independent, strong, capable of solving any problem. But at that moment, lying in a hospital bed, connected to machines that kept his heart beating, he felt small and vulnerable. The girl had seen him at his most fragile. She had seen him when he couldn't even breathe on his own. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. But there was something else, something he couldn't ignore. For the first time in years, Russell felt he wanted to do something for someone else, not out of obligation, not for business, but because it truly mattered. That girl had saved his life, and now she was out there on the street in danger with no one to protect her. "Harris," he said suddenly, "I want you to do something. Whatever you need, boss. I want you to find that girl." Harris hesitated. "Mr. Morrison, with all due respect, maybe this isn't the best time to—" "It's not about me," Russell interrupted him. "It's about her. A 5-year-old child shouldn't be alone on the street. But if no one knows who she is, then we'll find out. Talk to the police, to social workers, to whoever is necessary. I want to know who this girl is and where she is." Harris made a note in his pad. "Understood. I'll start the investigation tomorrow." "Today," Russell corrected. "Start today." The assistant glanced at the clock. "It's 3 in the morning, boss. Then start at 8. "I don't want to waste any more time." Harris nodded and put his pad away. "Are you going to rest now?" Russell closed his eyes, but he knew sleep wouldn't come easily. His mind was racing, full of unanswered questions. Where was the girl now? Was she cold, hungry, scared? And why did he care so much? All his life, Russell had focused on building his career, on accumulating money and power. He never had time to worry about strangers, especially street kids. But something had changed in that restaurant. When those small hands touched his chest, something inside him woke up. A feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. For the first time in years, Russell Morrison had a reason to want to live that went beyond himself, and it was all because of a brave little girl whose name he didn't even know. The monitor continued its steady beeping through the night, marking the rhythm of a heart that had learned to beat again. 3 days had passed since Russell left the hospital. 3 long days of unanswered phone calls, of Harris returning empty-handed. of social workers who seemed more interested in filling out forms than actually helping. "Nothing, Mr. Morrison," Harris said for the 5th time that week, entering the room with a defeated expression. "The police have no record of missing children matching the description. The shelters don't know anything either." Russell was in his living room, looking out the window. The sky was grey, heavy with clouds that threatened rain again. He tapped his fingers on the table, a growing irritation taking hold of him. "And the restaurant? I've already called 3 times today. The manager keeps saying he doesn't know anything." Russell clenched his fists. With each passing day, the sense of urgency grew. A 5-year-old child on the streets, in the cold, with a baby to care for. The image wouldn't leave his head. "He's either lying or incompetent," Russell muttered, turning from the window. Harris hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Boss, maybe it's time to accept that." "No." Russell turned sharply, his eyes flashing. "She's out there alone with a baby. It rained last night. I'm not giving up." He grabbed his coat hanging on the chair with a decisive movement. "Where are you going?" "To do what I should have done from the beginning." Harris frowned, worried. "The doctor said to avoid stress, and I'm going to the restaurant in person." "But sir—" "Harris." Russell stopped at the door and turned. "That girl saved my life. While I was here, comfortable and safe, she was out there cold and hungry. I can't live with that." 20 minutes later, Russell parked in front of the Golden Spoon. The place looked completely different during the day, less welcoming, more ordinary. The windows reflected the cloudy sky like opaque mirrors. He pushed the door and entered. The bell chimed, announcing his arrival. A few customers were having a quiet lunch, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded there just days ago. The same manager was behind the counter, checking papers. He was a man in his 50s, with a prominent belly and thinning hair. When he saw Russell, his face visibly paled. "Mr. Morrison," he said, his voice a little shaky. How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you." Russell approached the counter slowly, observing the man's body language. There was nervousness there, something beyond natural embarrassment. "I came to ask about the girl who helped me." Tom, a faded name tag identified him, fidgeted with the papers nervously, avoiding eye contact. "I've already told your assistant several times. I don't know anything about her." "Tom, isn't it?" Russell leaned in slightly. "Look, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to find a child who saved my life. I understand, sir, but She was asking for food. You kicked her out." "After the ambulance left." "Where did she go?" Tom swallowed hard. His hands were trembling slightly. I wasn't paying attention. I was focused on handling the emergency." Russell studied the man's face. There was something he wasn't telling. "Tom, a 5-year-old girl carrying a baby doesn't just vanish into thin air. Someone must have seen something." "Sir, I really don't—" "She was barefoot, in the cold, with a baby." Russell's voice grew deeper, laden with emotion. "Do you have children, Tom?" The manager stopped fiddling with the papers. I have 2 daughters. Then imagine one of them on the street, begging for food, being thrown out of restaurants." Tom looked down, clearly ashamed. It was a difficult situation. There are rules, you know. The owner doesn't like us letting people like that inside the restaurant." "I understand." Russell backed away. "But if you remember anything, call me." He left a card on the counter and walked out, frustrated. Outside, he stopped on the sidewalk and scanned the surrounding streets. It was an old neighborhood, with modest apartment buildings and a few small shops. If the girl was alone and on foot, she probably hadn't gone far from here. Russell started walking, with no specific destination. The sidewalks were wet from the early morning rain. The yellowish light from the street lamps created pools of brightness between the shadows. It was mid-afternoon, but the overcast sky made everything seem darker. He passed a small bakery, where an elderly woman shook her head when he showed her a blurry photo of the girl. Then he went to a laundromat, where the owner barely glanced at the image. At the small corner market, the result was the same. The young cashier looked at the photo for a few seconds, but ended up shaking his head. "Sorry, man, I don't remember seeing her." Russell kept walking. The silence of the streets felt heavier than ever. He wasn't used to walking without a destination. His entire life was planned, organized, efficient. But there he was, wasting an entire afternoon looking for a child who might not even want to be found. Why was he doing this? The question tormented him as he walked. Was it gratitude, guilt, or something deeper that he didn't want to admit? Maybe it was loneliness. Russell had lived alone for years, worked alone, ate alone. He had employees, business acquaintances, but no one who truly cared if he woke up the next day. Until that night in the restaurant, when a strange child had risked everything to save him. He turned onto a side street and then another. The neighborhood became progressively quieter. The houses were smaller here, older, some clearly abandoned. It started to rain again, a fine drizzle that slowly soaked him. Russell pulled his coat tighter and kept walking. That's when he heard a low sound, like someone rustling paper. He stopped and listened. The sound was coming from a narrow alley between two buildings. Russell hesitated for a moment, then approached slowly. The alley was dark, lit only by the faint light from the street. There were two large dumpsters and several scattered trash bags. And there, crouched near one of the dumpsters, was a small figure searching through torn bags. Russell's heart stopped. Even from behind, he recognized the messy blonde hair, the threadbare blanket that was now even dirtier. The girl was holding her baby brother with one arm, and with the other, she was rummaging through the trash for food. Sylvie, she was visibly thinner, her small shoulders slumped with exhaustion. The baby was too quiet, wrapped in the blanket. Russell could see that the child had also lost weight. For a moment, he just stood there watching. It was heartbreaking. Such a small child, reduced to looking for scraps in the trash to survive. How had he taken so long to search in person? Russell took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. He approached slowly, stepping carefully to avoid making a sound. He didn't want to scare her. "Sylvie?" he called in a low, calm voice. She spun around with a start, her eyes wide with terror. The blanket almost slipped from her lap, and she clutched the baby to her chest in a protective motion. Russell's stomach churned at the sight of her. She was dirtier, thinner, more frightened. There were small cuts on her hands, probably from digging through the trash. Her large eyes stared at him with recognition and fear. "It's me," he said, lowering his tone and slowly crouching down. "The man you helped." Sylvie lowered her face, and Russell saw tears begin to fall, mixing with the drizzle. We didn't do anything wrong," she whispered, her voice trembling. Russell's heart shattered. She thought he was there to scold her. No, he said quickly, kneeling on the wet ground. "You didn't do anything wrong. Quite the opposite." His expensive pants got soaked, but he didn't care. "Please," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I really want to thank you. You saved my life. I don't need anything." Her voice was almost a whisper. "You and your brother are hungry," Russell said, looking at the baby who seemed too weak to even cry. "Come with me. Let's get something to eat. You can trust me." Sylvie hesitated, looking at him with an expression that mixed desire and distrust. "Are you not going to call the police?" she asked, her voice low. "I'm not going to call anyone. I promise." For a few seconds, that felt like an eternity. They looked at each other. Russell could see the conflict in the girl's eyes, hunger fighting against fear. The baby began to cry softly, a weak sound that betrayed his hunger. Then Sylvie gave a small nod. Russell slowly extended his hand. When Sylvie's small, cold hand touched his, it felt as if something broke inside him, that old loneliness that had seemed a part of who he was. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get out of the rain." They walked slowly to the main street. Sylvie was limping slightly, and Russell noticed that one of her feet was injured. He wanted to pick her up, but he was afraid of scaring her. "Does it hurt?" he asked, pointing to her foot. "A little," she admitted. "We'll take a look at that after we eat, okay?" When they arrived at the restaurant, Tom saw them enter together and swallowed hard. His expression was one of pure embarrassment. "Their table for two," Russell said calmly, ignoring the manager's stare. A waitress led them to a table in the back, the same one where Russell had been during his heart attack. He helped Sylvie sit down, noticing how she observed everything. holding the baby as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "What would you like to eat?" Russell asked. She shrugged, not knowing what to say. "How about some nice hot soup and maybe a sandwich and milk for both of you?" Sylvie nodded timidly, and Russell saw her eyes well up with tears. He called the waitress and ordered chicken soup, a grilled cheese sandwich, 2 glasses of milk, and a simple dish for himself, though he wasn't hungry. While they waited, he watched Sylvie. The baby had stopped crying but was visibly weak. How long had it been since they had eaten a real meal? "What are your names?" he asked gently. "Sylvie," she replied, her voice still low. "And he's Tommy. Beautiful names. How old is Tommy?" 8 months. He'll be 9 next week." The food arrived quickly. Sylvie ate slowly at first, as if she couldn't believe it was real. Then hunger took over, and she began to eat more eagerly. Russell gave small pieces of bread soaked in milk to Tommy, who accepted them greedily. After a few minutes, when Sylvie seemed more relaxed, she finally looked up and said, "My mom always said that I should help people, even if I was scared." Russell closed his eyes for a moment, trying to hold back his emotion. "She raised a very brave girl." Sylvie looked down, stirring her soup. "She died." The words fell like stones in the silence. Russell felt his heart tighten. "I'm so sorry, Sylvie. She got sick after Tommy was born. The doctors tried to help, but—" Sylvie didn't finish the sentence. "And after that?" Russell asked gently. "We went to live with my aunt, but she said she couldn't take care of us, that she didn't have money for 2 kids. Russell clenched his fists under the table. How could someone abandon 2 children? "How long have you been on the streets?" "A few weeks. Maybe a month. I've lost track of the days." The soup bowl was almost empty now. Tommy had fallen asleep in Sylvie's lap, finally full. Her face still bore the marks of fear, but there was something different there too. Hope, perhaps. Russell watched her in silence. For the first time in many years, he felt something akin to responsibility and hope as well. He leaned forward and spoke calmly. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did." Sylvie looked down, blushing. I just didn't want you to die." Russell swallowed hard, moved by the simplicity of her words. "You saved me, and I can't let my hero, or her brother, go back to the streets." Sylvie slowly looked up, surprised. We have nowhere to go." Russell placed his hands on the table, weighing his next words carefully. "Then come with me." She shook her head, frightened. I can't pay. We don't have any money. No one is going to ask you for anything. You need a safe place. You deserve that." Sylvie looked at the sleeping Tommy and then at Russell. For a few seconds, he saw the conflict in her eyes, the desire to accept fighting against the fear of trusting. Then, in a whisper of a voice, she asked, "Is it far from here?" "No," he smiled, trying to convey a sense of calm. "It's a little closer than you think." Russell stood up and extended his hand. "Come on, let's go home." Sylvie looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Then, carefully, as if she feared it would all disappear, she took his hand. When their fingers touched, Russell knew his life was changing forever. And for the first time in years, he was eager to see what came next. Russell's car was parked just a few feet from the restaurant. He opened the back door slowly, as if any sudden movement might shatter the fragile moment they had built. "You can get in," he said gently, gesturing with his hand. Sylvie hesitated on the wet sidewalk, holding Tommy against her chest. Her small eyes scanned the car's interior. Flawless beige leather seats, panels illuminated with soft lights, a pleasant smell of cleanliness mixed with something she couldn't identify. Perhaps it was the cologne he wore, or simply the scent of an organized, comfortable life. It was so different from anything she knew. For the past few months, she had only walked or occasionally hitched a ride in the back of delivery trucks. She had never been in such a beautiful car. "It's okay," Russell repeated, noticing her hesitation. "It's just a car. It won't hurt you." She got in slowly, sitting on the back seat with Tommy nestled firmly in her lap. The seat was soft and warm, a strange sensation after weeks of sleeping on hard or cold surfaces. Russell closed the door carefully and walked around to the driver's side. When he started the car, the dashboard lights came on, creating a bluish glow inside. The heater began to work immediately, spreading warm air that slowly dried her hair from the drizzle. During the drive, Sylvie watched everything in absolute silence. The streets passed by the window like a movie. Lit storefronts, people walking with umbrellas, gleaming cars. She held Tommy tightly, as if she feared it was all just an elaborate dream and she might wake up back in the cold, dark alley. Tommy had fallen asleep in the warmth of the car, his small at regular breaths against Sylvie's chest. It was the first time in weeks that he seemed truly relaxed, not that restless, interrupted sleep they had been having on the streets. "We're almost there," Russell said, looking in the rearview mirror and seeing the girl's tense expression. Sylvie nodded without speaking. Her hands were trembling slightly, not from the cold now, but from pure nervousness. Where was he taking her? What if he changed his mind halfway there? What if it was some kind of trap she couldn't see? But when she looked at his face reflected in the rearview mirror, she saw only kindness. And tiredness too. The same kind of weariness she carried, as if he too had been through difficult things in life. The car turned onto a tree-lined street, completely different from the restaurant's neighborhood. The houses here were large and spaced out, with well-tended gardens and low fences. Tall trees lined the street, creating a natural canopy that made everything feel more welcoming. Sylvie had never been in a neighborhood like this. The houses looked like something out of TV shows she occasionally watched through shop windows. Happy families, bright living rooms, kitchens with large tables where everyone sat down for dinner. Russell parked in front of a two-story house with dark bricks and tall windows that shone with a warm, inviting yellow light. There was a small garden in the front, with flowers she didn't know the names of, but which looked well cared for even in winter. "We're here," he said, turning off the engine and turning to look at her. When they got out of the car, Sylvie looked up, impressed. The house seemed huge, especially after weeks of sleeping in narrow alleys and abandoned buildings. It had a front porch with 2 rocking chairs, as if it were a place where people actually lived, not just existed. Russell opened the front door with a golden key, and an immediate smell of home greeted them. It was a soft mix of coffee, bread that had recently been baked, and something floral, perhaps an air freshener or fresh flowers. There was something familiar and welcoming in that scent, which vaguely reminded her of her mother's kitchen on Sunday mornings. "Please, come in," he said, signaling for her to go first. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. The living room had high ceilings with exposed wooden beams, large brown leather sofas, and a fireplace that radiated genuine warmth. There were books organized on the shelves, discreet paintings on the walls, and soft rugs on the polished wooden floor. But what caught Sylvie's attention the most was the silence. Not the scary, empty silence of the streets at night, but a comfortable, possibility-filled silence. It was the silence of a house that was waiting to be filled with life. Russell took a deep breath, watching Sylvie and Tommy standing in the middle of his living room. There was something almost surreal about the scene. A little girl and a baby, after everything they had been through, finally safe. Something important was beginning here. He could feel it physically, like a door opening after being locked for a long time. "You can sit on the sofa for a bit," he said, pointing to the main sofa near the fireplace. "I'm going to arrange for some things you'll need." Sylvie sat carefully on the edge of the sofa, as if afraid of getting it dirty. The fabric was incredibly soft and warm, heated by the warmth of the fireplace. She couldn't remember the last time she had sat on something so comfortable. Maybe she had never experienced so much comfort before. Russell picked up the phone from the coffee table and called Harris. He tried to keep his voice low, but Sylvie could hear fragments of the conversation. "Harris, I need you to do some urgent shopping, small clothes, a 5-year-old size, nothing too fancy, just the basics. Diapers, size for an 8-month-old baby. Powdered milk, baby bottles, maybe some simple toys, and blankets. Very soft and warm blankets. Please, as soon as possible. Can it be today?" He paused, listening to the response on the other end. Sylvie saw him frown slightly, as if Harris was asking questions. "No, Harris, don't ask now. Just bring everything I asked for, please. An hour, at most." "Thank you. I'll explain later." When he hung up, Russell turned to Sylvie with a smile that seemed genuinely warm. "A friend of mine is going to bring some things you'll need. Clean clothes, proper food for Tommy, things like that." While waiting for Harris to arrive, Russell went upstairs to the second floor. There were 3 bedrooms there: his own master bedroom, an office he used occasionally, and an old guest room that hadn't had visitors in at least 2 years. He opened the guest room door and turned on the light. The room was clean. He paid a cleaning lady who came weekly, but devoid of life. A twin bed with white sheets, a dark wood dresser, an upholstered chair near the window. The window overlooked the backyard, where some trees cast interesting shadows. Russell went downstairs and grabbed several cushions from the living room sofa and a closet in the hallway. He returned to the room and arranged them carefully in a corner, creating a kind of makeshift crib for Tommy. It wasn't perfect, but it would be safe and infinitely more comfortable than any place they had slept recently. Then he went to his own room and took some clean blankets from a large closet. He chose the softest ones he had. Some he had received as gifts, but never used. He also brought a flannel nightgown that had shrunk in the wash months ago, but would fit Sylvie perfectly. He left everything arranged on the upholstered chair and went downstairs again, feeling a strange satisfaction in taking care of someone after so long of living only for himself. In the kitchen, he warmed fresh milk on the stove, stirring slowly with a wooden spoon to prevent a skin from forming on the surface. He added a pinch of sugar and a drop of vanilla. Children liked sweet and tasty things, didn't they? He didn't really know, but it seemed like the right thing to do. When he returned to the living room carrying a mug of warm milk, Sylvie was still sitting in the same position, observing everything around her with big, attentive eyes. Tommy was sleeping soundly in her lap, more relaxed than he had been in weeks. "I brought you some warm milk," he said, offering the mug carefully. "I thought you might be cold." She hesitated for a few long seconds, looking at the mug as if she couldn't believe it was really for her, as if she were waiting for him to change his mind or say it was a prank. Then, very slowly, she extended one of her small hands and held the mug with extreme care, as if it were made of precious glass. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice so low he had to lean in to hear. Russell felt something tighten painfully in his chest. It was just a simple word, but it carried so much weight. Pure gratitude, genuine surprise, and something like timid hope. "When my friend arrives with the clothes and other things, you can take a hot bath and change," he explained. "The room upstairs is yours and Tommy's, for as long as you want to stay." Sylvie looked at him over the mug of milk, steam rising and warming her small face. "Are really ours?" she asked, as if she couldn't fully process the idea. "Yes, for as long as you want to stay. There's no rush to decide anything." She drank the milk slowly, savoring each sip as if it were the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. It had been so long since she had had warm, sweet milk. It had been so long since someone had prepared something especially for her, thinking about what she might like. Tommy began to stir in her lap, making little baby noises of someone waking up. Russell moved a little closer, maintaining a respectful distance. "Can I hold him for a minute? So you can finish your milk calmly and relax a bit?" Sylvie hesitated visibly. Tommy was all she had in the world, her only family, her only real responsibility. But there was something in Russell's voice, a genuine and respectful kindness that made her nod slowly. Russell took the baby with extreme care, as if he were made of delicate porcelain. Tommy looked at him with curious, alert eyes, without crying or showing fear. "Hi, Tommy," Russell said softly, adjusting the baby in his arms. "You're a very brave little boy, aren't you? Being taken care of by your big sister like this." Seeing such a large and seemingly strong man holding her little brother with such gentleness and affection made Sylvie visibly relax. The muscles in her shoulders, which had been tense for weeks, finally loosened a bit. Maybe, just maybe, she could really trust him. Harris arrived exactly 58 minutes later, carrying several bags from different stores. Russell quickly answered the door, took all the bags without letting Harris in, and dismissed the assistant with a minimal explanation that everything would be clarified the next day. Then he helped Sylvie up to the room, carrying Tommy while she held onto the hem of her dirty shirt. She looked at everything with silent admiration: the bed with clean, fragrant sheets, The new clothes still with tags on the chair, the makeshift crib for Tommy with soft blankets. "The bathroom is over there," he said, pointing to a white door. "There are clean towels, soap, shampoo, everything you'll need. Make yourself completely at home." When Russell left and closed the door carefully, Sylvie sat on the edge of the bed and began to cry softly. They were not tears of sadness, but of pure, overwhelming relief. For weeks she had carried the impossible weight of caring for Tommy alone, of finding food every day, of seeking shelter every night. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt genuinely safe. The next morning, Sylvie woke up completely disoriented. The sun streamed gently through the clean window, creating comforting golden patterns on the wooden floor. For a long, frightening moment, she couldn't remember where she was, and that filled her with panic. Then she saw Tommy sleeping peacefully in the makeshift crib, saw the clean clothes she had put on the night before after the longest, warmest bath of her life, and the memory returned like a wave of relief. Russell's house. Real safety. She got up slowly, still wearing the flannel nightgown that was a bit big but incredibly soft, and walked to the door. She opened it slightly and looked into the large, quiet hallway, with a soft carpet that completely muffled the sound of her bare feet. Russell appeared at the end of the hallway, carrying an extra blanket and a towel. When he saw her peeking through the door, he smiled with genuine kindness. "Good morning, Sylvie. Did you sleep well?" She nodded, clutching the soft fabric of the nightgown with her small fingers. It was much bigger than her size, but it was the most comfortable thing she had ever worn. "Do you live here alone?" she asked softly, her voice filled with innocent and careful curiosity. Russell paused visibly, as if the question had caught him by surprise. Then he came a little closer and answered calmly, "Yes, I've lived alone for a few years." You don't have a family?" Her voice came out even smaller, but there was a genuine concern there. Russell looked down and took a deep breath before answering, as if deciding how much of the truth to share. "I had a family, but now I don't anymore." Sylvie thought for a few seconds, processing this information. She recognized that tone of voice perfectly, that careful way of talking about loss. It was exactly the same one she used when she talked about her mother. Then, with a courage that surprised her, she said, "I think it must be very sad to live alone in such a big house." Russell smiled, but she clearly saw his eyes become moist. It is very sad, Sylvie." For a moment that seemed to stretch on forever, the two looked at each other in complete silence. Two hearts deeply marked by loss, recognizing in each other the exact same emptiness, the same fundamental loneliness they carried every day. Sylvie understood in that moment that perhaps Russell needed her as much as she needed him. Not in the same way. He had food, a house, money, security, but he was also completely alone in the world. Russell came a little closer and gently stroked her hair, an almost paternal gesture. But maybe that's changing now. Later that morning, when Tommy woke up and was carefully fed with warm milk, Russell entered the room to talk properly with Sylvie. She was sitting on the bed, gently playing with her brother's little fingers and whispering things he couldn't understand. He sat in an armchair near the window, keeping a respectful distance so as not to scare her or make her feel pressured. "Everything is okay here," he said softly. "No one is going to send you away. You don't have to be afraid." Sylvie looked down, and he saw that she was struggling with some intense emotion. After a long silence, she began to speak, her voice small but firm. "My mum got very sick, right after my brother was born. She died before we could get home from the hospital." Russell listened in absolute silence, seeing the raw pain in the girl's eyes. "I tried to stay with my aunt after that, but she said she couldn't take care of us. That she didn't have money for 2 children, especially a baby." She took a deep, obviously difficult breath. "And after that?" Russell asked very softly. "After that, we were on the street. I tried to get help, but people, they didn't want to listen to us." Sylvie's eyes filled with tears that she tried to hide. "I'm so scared. Scared that I can't take care of him properly. Scared of being alone forever. Scared that something will happen to him because of me." Russell felt a painful lump in his throat, Seeing such a small child carry so much weight, so much impossible responsibility, was almost unbearable. He got up from the armchair and came a little closer, speaking in a firm but incredibly gentle voice. "You're not alone anymore, Sylvie. You don't have to be afraid." Sylvie lifted her tear-stained face, surprised and hesitant. For the first time since she had arrived, she seemed to truly believe he was telling the truth. And maybe, for the first time since her mother died, she didn't feel completely lost and alone in the world. There was still a lot of fear, a lot of natural distrust, but there was also something new and fragile growing in her chest. True hope. And in Russell's silent house, two deeply lonely souls began to discover that maybe they didn't have to carry their pain alone forever. The first few days with Sylvie and Tommy in the house were a mix of joy and complete chaos. Russell had never imagined how difficult it would be to care for two children, especially a baby who needed constant attention. On Monday morning, he woke up early as always, put on his suit and went downstairs for coffee. He found Sylvie already awake in the living room, holding a softly crying Tommy. "He won't stop crying," she said, worried. "I think he's hungry, but I don't know how to make the bottle right." Russell looked at the clock. He had an important meeting at 9 in the morning, but he couldn't just leave and let Sylvie handle everything alone. "Come on, I'll teach you," he said, taking off his jacket and rolling up his sleeves. They went to the kitchen, where Russell showed her how to heat the milk to the right temperature, how to mix in the powdered milk, how to test if it wasn't too hot. Sylvie paid attention to every detail, as if memorizing an important lesson. When Tommy finally stopped crying and started to drink, Russell looked at the clock again. 15 minutes late. "I have to go to work," he said, grabbing his jacket. "Will you be okay?" Sylvie nodded, but he saw the uncertainty in her eyes. Throughout the entire meeting, Russell had trouble concentrating. He thought about Sylvie alone with Tommy, imagining 1,000 things that could go wrong. What if the baby got sick? What if Sylvie got hurt? What if she decided it was too much responsibility and ran away? He arrived home in the middle of the afternoon and found them both asleep on the sofa. Sylvie had dark circles under her eyes, a sign that it had been a difficult morning. On Tuesday, the situation repeated itself. Tommy woke up with a low fever, and Sylvie panicked. Russell cancelled 2 meetings to take them to the pediatrician, who said it was just a common cold. "Babies get sick sometimes," the doctor explained. "It's normal. He just needs care and affection." But for Sylvie, who had been carrying the weight of caring for her brother for months, any symptom was a cause for terror. On Wednesday, Russell tried to work from home. He set up his laptop on the living room table and started answering emails while Sylvie played with Tommy on the rug. It worked well for an hour. Then Tommy started crying. Sylvie spilled a glass of juice on the table, and the phone rang 3 times in a row with urgent calls. "Harris, I need more time," he told his assistant. "I can't leave the house today." "Mr. Morrison, you have the presentation for the investors on Friday. You need to review the numbers and—" I know. I'll figure something out." But by Thursday, the situation became unsustainable. Tommy had been up all night crying with colic, Sylvie couldn't sleep, and Russell stayed up trying to help as well. In the morning, all 3 were exhausted. Sylvie was dozing on the sofa with Tommy in her lap, and Russell was looking at the pile of documents he needed to review before the presentation. That's when he realized he couldn't handle everything on his own. As much as he wanted to be present for Sylvie and Tommy, he had responsibilities at work. People depended on him, important projects awaited his attention. And at the same time, the children needed constant, dedicated care. Especially Sylvie, who was still adjusting to her new life and carried deep trauma from everything she had been through. On Thursday afternoon, after a particularly difficult morning, in which Tommy had thrown up 3 times and Sylvie was almost in tears from exhaustion, Russell made a decision. He called Sylvie to sit with him in the living room. Tommy had finally fallen asleep in the makeshift crib, and the house was quiet. "Sylvie, I need to talk to you about something important," he said, choosing his words carefully. She sat on the edge of the sofa, immediately tense. Russell noticed that whenever he said they needed to talk, she became afraid it was something bad. "I need help taking care of you two while I work," he said directly. Sylvie immediately looked down. and he saw her shoulders shrink. It was exactly the reaction he had feared. "This doesn't mean you're leaving," he added quickly. "It means I'm going to hire someone to be here during the day, to help you with Tommy and to make sure you're safe." "But will you come back?" she asked in a whisper of a voice, without looking up. The question hit Russell like a punch. She was still afraid he would abandon her, even after everything. "Always," he said firmly. "I will always come home. I will always come back to you. I just want to make sure you're safe and well cared for when I'm not here." Sylvie finally looked at him. "You promise?" "I promise. This is your home now, and I'm not going anywhere." She thought for a few seconds, then nodded slowly. "Okay, if you think it's for the best." The next day, Russell called an agency specializing in caregivers. He explained the situation. 2 children who had been through trauma needed someone gentle and experienced. "I have the perfect person," said the woman from the agency. "Mrs. Winslow. She has 40 years of experience with children, is very caring, and has worked on similar cases before." Mrs. Winslow arrived on Friday morning. She was a woman in her 60s, with grey hair tied in a soft bun and a smile that immediately conveyed trust. Russell greeted her at the door and led her to the living room, where Sylvie was sitting with Tommy in her lap. "Sylvie, this is Mrs. Winslow," he said. "She's going to help take care of you too." Mrs. Winslow approached slowly, respecting Sylvie's space. "Hi, Sylvie," she said in a sweet but firm voice. "I'm going to help you take care of your brother. What a beautiful boy he is." Sylvie looked at the woman cautiously, but showed no fear. "His name is Tommy," she said softly. "Tommy is a very nice name, and you are a very brave sister for taking such good care of him." Russell watched the interaction with relief. Mrs. Winslow had exactly the right touch, gentle but not intrusive, caring but respectful. "How about I make a snack for you two?" Mrs. Winslow suggested, "and then you can show me how Tommy likes to be rocked." During the morning, Russell stayed home, observing how Mrs. Winslow interacted with the children. She helped Sylvie give Tommy a bath, taught her a new lullaby, and even managed to make Sylvie laugh when she told a funny story about a cat that thought it was a dog. When it was time for Russell to go to the office, he knelt down to Sylvie's level. "I'm going to work now, but I'll be back in the late afternoon. Mrs. Winslow will be here with you." "Okay," Sylvie said, but he saw she was still a little nervous. "If you need anything, you can call me. Mrs. Winslow has my number." For the first time in a week, Russell was able to work without constantly worrying. He knew Sylvie and Tommy were in good hands. He arrived home at 5 in the afternoon and heard voices in the kitchen. When he entered, he found Mrs. Winslow teaching Sylvie how to make simple cookies, while Tommy watched from the stroller Harris had bought. "How was your day?" he asked. "Very good," replied Mrs. Winslow. "Sylvie is a wonderful helper. She knows exactly how Tommy likes things." Sylvie smiled, proud of the compliment. After Mrs. Winslow left, promising to return on Monday, Russell sat on the sofa to relax. It had been the first productive day he'd had in a week. That's when he heard small footsteps approaching. Sylvie appeared in the room, holding a folded piece of paper in her hands. "Russell," she called. "Hi. What do you have there?" Instead of answering, she ran to him and hugged him tightly, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "Thank you so much for getting us off the street," she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. Russell felt his eyes sting. He hugged the small girl, feeling an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. "You don't have to thank me," he whispered. "You've given me much more than I've given you." Sylvie pulled away a little and held out the folded paper. "I made this for you." Russell carefully unfolded the paper. It was a drawing made with colored pencils. 3 people holding hands under a big yellow sun. A small girl, a tall man, and a baby in the girl's arms. "It's us," Sylvie explained, pointing to each figure. "Me, you, and Tommy. We're a family now, right?" Russell looked at the drawing and felt something break inside him. It wasn't sadness. It was the opposite. It was as if something that had been hardened for years was finally opening up. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I'll keep it forever." "Really? Really? I'm going to frame it and put it in my office for everyone to see." Sylvie smiled, the widest and most genuine smile he had seen since he met her. That night, after putting the children to bed, Russell sat in the living room looking at the drawing. For the first time in years, his house didn't feel empty. It was full of life, laughter, purpose. Mrs. Winslow had been an excellent idea. She would take care of Sylvie and Tommy during the day, ensuring they were safe and happy. And he could work knowing he had a family waiting for him at home. A family. The word still sounded strange, but every day it felt more right. Russell looked at the drawing again. 3 people holding hands. Maybe that's how families were made. Not just by blood, but by choice, by love, by mutual care. And maybe, just maybe, he had found the family he had always been looking for in the most unlikely of places. The next day, as promised, he took the drawing to be framed. The shop clerk smiled when she saw the childish art. "What a lovely drawing. Your daughter is very talented." "She is," Russell agreed, smiling. She's very special." And for the first time, saying my daughter didn't feel strange. It felt right. It felt true. It was almost 2 in the morning when Russell woke to the sound of crying coming from Sylvie's room. It wasn't Tommy's normal cry. It was something different, sharper, more desperate. He jumped out of bed and ran down the hall, his heart already racing. When he opened the door to the room, he found a scene that filled him with panic. Sylvie was sitting up in bed, hugging Tommy, trembling violently. Her face was red and hot. Beads of sweat ran down her forehead, and she was breathing in short, ragged gasps. "Sylvie, what's happening?" he asked, rushing to the bed. "It hurts," she whispered between sobs. "So my chest is tight. I can't breathe right." Russell touched her forehead. It was burning with fever. He looked at Tommy, who was awake but calm, just watching his sister with big, worried eyes. "It's okay, little one," Russell said, trying to keep his voice calm despite the panic he felt. "We're going to take you to the hospital right now." "I don't want to go," she cried. "My mum went to the hospital and she didn't come back." Russell's heart shattered. Of course she would be afraid of hospitals. All the worst memories of her life were tied to that place. "This time is different," he said, kneeling beside the bed. "I'll be with you the whole time. I won't leave your side for a second." Sylvie looked at him with eyes full of tears and fear. "Promise." "I promise. And Tommy is coming with us too. We're not going to be separated." Russell grabbed the warmest blanket he could find and wrapped it carefully around Sylvie. She was so small and fragile in his arms, shivering with fever and fear. "So I get Tommy?" she asked, her voice weak. "Of course. We'll all go together." He carried Sylvie in his left arm and Tommy in his right, going down the stairs as fast as he could without risking a fall. The car was in the garage, and he managed to settle both children in the back seat before speeding off. During the drive to the hospital, Russell constantly glanced in the rearview mirror. Sylvie was leaning against the seat, still hugging Tommy, struggling to breathe. "It's going to be okay," he repeated. "I promise it's going to be okay." But inside, he was terrified. What if it was something serious? What if he lost Sylvie too? The thought was unbearable. In just a few weeks, this brave little girl had become the most important thing in his life. She and Tommy had filled a void he didn't even know existed. They arrived at the emergency room, and Russell ran inside, carrying both children. "I need help," he yelled. "A 5-year-old girl with a high fever and respiratory distress." A nurse appeared immediately with a small gurney. "Put her here, we'll take care of her." "I'm coming with you," Russell said firmly. "Sir, are you—" "I'm her guardian. I'm not leaving her side." The nurse looked at Sylvie, who was clinging to Russell's shirt with all her might. "All right, you can come." They took Sylvie to an emergency room, where a young doctor began to examine her immediately. Russell stood by the gurney, holding her small hand while Tommy slept in his arms. "It looks like pneumonia," the doctor said, after listening to her lungs. "We'll do an X-ray to confirm, but she'll need to be hospitalized for a few days." "Pneumonia?" Russell felt his blood run cold. "Is it serious?" "With the right treatment, no. But in young children, especially those who have experienced stress or malnutrition, it can be more complicated. We'll monitor her closely." Sylvie squeezed Russell's hand. "You're not going to leave, right?" "Never," he said, kissing her hot forehead. "I'll stay here until you're completely better." They transferred Sylvie to a room on the pediatric floor. It was a small but cozy room, with colorful walls and a few toys. There was an armchair that turned into a bed next to the main bed. "You can stay here with her," the nurse said. "And the baby too, no problem." Throughout the night, Russell stayed awake watching Sylvie. The doctors had started an IV and antibiotics, but she still had a fever and was struggling to breathe. Tommy slept peacefully in the crib the hospital had provided, oblivious to the seriousness of the situation. Around 4 in the morning, Sylvie woke up and looked around, confused. "Where are we?" "In the hospital. Remember, you had a fever. You stayed here all night. I told you I wouldn't leave your side." She smiled weakly. "I thank you for not leaving me alone." Russell held her small hand, feeling an intense emotion wash over him. In that moment, looking at that brave girl in the hospital bed, he knew he had to tell her about his own daughter. "Sylvie," he said softly, "I want to tell you something. About why I lived alone in that big house." She looked at him attentively. "I had a daughter," he began, his voice choked. "Her name was Emma. She was about your age." Sylvie frowned. "Where is she?" "She got very sick, kind of like you are now, but more serious. We brought her to the hospital. The doctors tried everything, but we couldn't save her." Tears started to stream down Russell's face. "She died 3 years ago. And since then, I couldn't care about anything anymore since until I met you." Sylvie reached out her small hand and touched his face. "You must have been very sad." "I was very sad and very lonely. But you taught me that it's possible to love again, that it's possible to be happy again." "Was your daughter pretty?" "She was beautiful and brave like you. I think you two would have gotten along very well." They sat in silence for a few minutes, just holding each other's hands. "Russell," Sylvie said finally. "Yes. Do you think your daughter would be happy if she knew you were taking care of us?" Russell smiled through his tears. "I think so. I think she would be very happy." The next day, Sylvie's fever finally started to break. The antibiotics were working, and she could breathe better. The doctor said she could be discharged in 2 days if she continued to improve. Russell had spent the whole night thinking. Watching Sylvie sleep, caring for Tommy when he woke up, he came to a conclusion that had been growing in his heart for weeks. When Sylvie woke up the next morning, he was sitting in the chair by her bed, watching her with a smile. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said, sitting up in bed. "It doesn't hurt as much anymore." "That's good. The doctor said you'll be all better soon." Sylvie nodded, then looked at Tommy, who was playing with a toy a nurse had brought. "Russell," she said after a few seconds. "Yes? When I get out of here, are we still going to live at your house?" "Of course. That's your home now. Forever." Russell took a deep breath. It was time to ask the question he had been rehearsing since dawn. "Sylvie, if you want, I would very much like for you to be my daughter, for real, legally." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I want to adopt you. And Tommy, too. I want you to be my real children, not just people living in my house." Sylvie's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "And my brother, too?" she asked, just to be sure. "Yes, both of you. You are a family, and I will never separate you." "But I don't know how to be a real daughter," she said, her voice small. "I only know how to take care of Tommy." "And I don't know much about being a father," Russell admitted. "But we'll learn together. The important thing is that we love each other, and we want to be together." Sylvie thought for a few seconds, looking at Tommy and then at Russell. "If I'm your daughter, you'll never send me away. Even if I do something wrong?" "Never. Families don't send each other away, no matter what happens. And Tommy will be your son too. Will you take care of him if something happens to me?" "I will take care of you both forever. That's a promise." Sylvie then smiled, a small but brave smile. "Then we want to," she said, "me and Tommy, we want to be your real family." Russell leaned over and hugged the small girl, feeling a happiness he hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for letting me be your father." "Thank you for wanting to be," she replied. From the crib nearby, Tommy made a happy noise, as if he understood that something important had just happened. 3 days later, when they left the hospital, they were no longer just Russell, Sylvie, and Tommy. They were a family. A family that had found each other under the most unlikely circumstances, but that was real and true. As they left the hospital, Sylvie held Russell's hand firmly. "Dad," she said, trying out the word. "Yes, daughter." "Are we going home?" "We're going home." And for the first time in their lives, all three of them knew exactly where that place was. 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, Russell was nervous in a way he hadn't been since his first major business meeting. But this time, it wasn't about money or contracts. It was about something infinitely more valuable. He looked at himself in the mirror one last time, adjusted the blue tie Sylvie had picked out for him, and went downstairs to find the children. The girl was in the living room, wearing a new light blue dress that Mrs. Winslow had helped her choose especially for the occasion. Tommy was in her lap, wearing a baby outfit that made him look like a little gentleman. "You both look beautiful," Russell said, smiling genuinely. "This is a special day, right?" Sylvie asked, still a little confused about all the legal proceedings that had been happening in recent weeks. Over the past few months, they had gone through a seemingly endless series of interviews, evaluations, and visits from social workers. Each meeting was a mix of hope and anxiety, hope that everything would work out, and anxiety that something might go wrong at the last minute. "It's the most special day of our lives," he replied, kneeling down to her level. "Today, you will officially become my children forever." Sylvie smiled, but there was still a familiar shadow of insecurity in her eyes. Even after all these months of safety and love, part of her still feared it could all disappear. What if they change their minds? What if they say, "I can't be your real daughter"? Russell held her small hands in his. "That's not going to happen. Everyone who has spoken with us agrees that you should stay with me. The social worker, the psychologist, the judge. They all saw that we are a real family." And it was true. Over the previous weeks, they had undergone a rigorous series of interviews and evaluations. Russell had to prove he could financially support the children, that he had a stable and safe home, and that he understood the responsibilities of being an adoptive father. Sylvie was interviewed several times by a specialized psychologist who was impressed by her maturity and the clear, deep bond she had developed with Russell. The professional was particularly touched when Sylvie drew the family in one of her sessions, always 3 people holding hands, always smiling. The whole process was faster than usual, mainly because the children's situation was one of complete abandonment, with no other relatives interested in caring for them or contesting the adoption. Mrs. Winslow said that, after we get back, she's going to make a special cake to celebrate, Sylvie said, trying to hide her anxiety with talk of good things. "A cake?" Russell asked, feigning surprise. "What kind of cake?" "Chocolate with strawberries. She said it's the best cake for celebrating a new family." Tommy babbled something that sounded like approval, making them both laugh. "Shall we go?" Russell asked, holding out his hand. The courthouse was in the city center, an old solemn building with marble staircases and high corridors that echoed every sound. When they arrived, Sylvie looked up, impressed by the size of the place. "It's very big," she commented. "Important places usually are," Russell said, picking up Tommy so Sylvie could climb the stairs more easily. The social worker assigned to their case, Mrs. Rodriguez, was already waiting for them in the main hall. She was a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and eyes that had seen many stories like theirs. "Good morning, Morrison family," she said, smiling broadly. "Morrison family," Sylvie repeated softly, testing the sound of the words. "I like that very much." "Me too," said Mrs. Rodriguez. "Are you ready for the big moment?" They were taken to a small but elegant room on the 2nd floor where a court official was waiting for them behind a polished dark wood desk. There were carefully organized documents, official pens, and stamps with government seals. The walls were decorated with certificates and photos from other adoption ceremonies, happy faces of families who had gone through the same process. "Mr. Russell Morrison?" asked the official, a grey-haired man with a formal but gentle voice. Yes, sir, and these are Sylvie and Thomas, who will legally be known as Sylvie Morrison and Thomas Morrison. Russell looked at Sylvie, who nodded shyly, then at Tommy in his arms. Yes, sir, they are my children. The words came out naturally, as if he had been saying them his whole life. And in a way, he felt he had for the past few months. They had been his family in everything but paper. The official carefully explained all the procedures, read some important legal clauses, and asked Russell to sign a series of documents. Sylvie watched everything attentively, still holding Tommy in her lap when Russell needed both hands. This document establishes that you, Sir Russell Morrison, assume all parental responsibilities for Sylvie and Thomas, the official explained. This includes medical care, education, emotional well-being, and all important decisions in their lives. I understand, Russell said, signing carefully. And this document confirms that they will be entitled to inheritance, life insurance, and all the legal benefits of biological children. Perfect. Sylvie didn't fully understand all the legal terms, but she understood the essence. They were becoming a real family in the eyes of the law. And now, said the official, picking up two new elegant certificates, the most important part. He stamped the documents with a golden official seal and handed them to Mrs. Rodriguez, who ceremoniously passed them to Russell. Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Rodriguez, it is with great pleasure that I declare this adoption officially complete. From this moment on, Sylvie and Thomas are legally your children, with all the rights and privileges that this entails. Russell looked at the certificates in his hands. There were the names in elegant script: Sylvie Morrison, Thomas Morrison. It was official, it was real, it was permanent. Congratulations, said Mrs. Rodriguez, her eyes visibly moist. In all my 20 years of work, I've rarely seen a family form so naturally and lovingly. Sylvie looked at Russell, then at the official papers. Does this mean I'm really your daughter now? Forever? It means you were always my daughter in my heart, he said, kneeling and hugging her with Tommy between them. Now it's just on paper too. No one can ever change that. For the first time since her mother died, Sylvie felt a complete and definitive sense of security. Not just a temporary place to sleep or hide, but a real, permanent home, with a real family where she completely and forever belonged. She hugged Russell with all her might. I love you, Dad. I love you too, daughter. And I love you too, Tommy. As if he perfectly understood the importance of the moment, Tommy babbled something that sounded distinctly like Dada, making everyone laugh through tears of happiness. The court official smiled, clearly used to witnessing emotional moments like this one. Would you like an official photo? He offered. To mark this special day. Yes, please, Russell said immediately. They positioned themselves behind the desk, Russell with Tommy in his arms and Sylvie by his side holding the adoption certificates. The photo showed them smiling genuinely, a real and legal family. When they left the courthouse an hour later, there was a lightness in the air that none of them had felt before. The weight of uncertainty had completely vanished. Are we a family forever now? Sylvie asked for the third time, still needing confirmation. Forever and ever, Russell confirmed. Nothing and no one can change that. 3 months had passed since that significant day at the courthouse. Life had found a comfortable and genuinely happy rhythm. Sylvie was attending a nearby private school, where she quickly distinguished herself as an intelligent, dedicated and surprisingly popular student. The teachers were impressed with her maturity and her ability to help younger classmates. Tommy was growing up healthy and cheerful, a chubby, smiling baby who was already showing signs of wanting to walk. He always reacted with enthusiasm when he saw Russell come home from work, stretching out his little arms and shouting "Dada" more and more clearly, Mrs. Winslow continued to help during the day, but now she functioned more like a loving and available grandmother than a hired nanny. She had become deeply attached to the children, and Russell knew they were extraordinarily lucky to have her. The house, which for years had been silent and empty, was now constantly full of life. The sounds of playing, lively dinner conversations, children's music playing on the weekend. It was exactly what a family home should be. On a Friday night in December, as the first snow of winter began to fall outside, Russell had a special idea. How about we go out for dinner tonight? He suggested during the afternoon snack. "Where are we going?" Sylvie asked, immediately excited. She loved the occasional dinners out, which always felt like little celebrations. "I have a very special place in mind." "Is it a surprise?" she asked, clapping her hands. "It's a surprise, but it's a place that has a lot of meaning for our family." Sylvie frowned, trying to guess, but Russell kept the mystery. An hour later, when the car stopped in front of the Golden Spoon, Sylvie was completely quiet for a few long seconds, just staring out the window. "It's here," she said softly, her voice full of recognition. "It's where it all began." "This is exactly it," Russell confirmed. "I thought it would be important to come back, to show how things have changed, to celebrate our journey." Sylvie looked at the restaurant through the window. The last time she had been there, she was a desperate, hungry child, carrying baby Tommy, being thrown out into the cold rain. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she asked, a shadow of anxiety crossing her face. "I'm absolutely sure," Russell said. "This time, we enter as a family. As customers, as people who deserve respect." When they entered the restaurant, Sylvie holding Russell's hand tightly and him carrying Tommy in his other arm, the dining room gradually fell silent. Some of the older customers recognized them. It was impossible to forget the extraordinary story of the girl who saved a man's life in the middle of the restaurant. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. No one laughed or pointed. There was genuine respect in their gazes, and even clear admiration. Some people whispered among themselves, but they were positive comments, full of respectful curiosity. Tom, the manager, saw them enter and immediately dropped what he was doing to come towards them. He was visibly nervous, his hands trembling slightly, but determined. "Mr. Morrison," he said, his voice hesitant but sincere. "Sir, our entire team wanted to apologize." Russell stopped, genuinely surprised. Apologize for what? For what happened that terrible night? For the way we treated? He looked directly at Sylvie. "For the cruel way I treated you. It was inexcusable, and we know it." Sylvie hid slightly behind Russell, vague but uncomfortable memories of that awful night returning to her mind. "It was nothing personal against you," Russell said diplomatically. "You didn't know the whole situation." "But we should have been kinder, more human," Tom insisted. "A child is a child, no matter the circumstances. And especially such a brave child." Tom carefully knelt down to Sylvie's level, who looked at him with a mix of curiosity and caution. "You are a very special girl," he said with sincerity. "What you did that night. You saved a precious life. You are a true hero, and we all know that now." He stood up and quickly went to the counter, returning with a small bowl of ice cream specially decorated with colored whipped cream, a red cherry on top, and small star-shaped cookies. "A special treat on the house," he said, offering it ceremoniously to Sylvie. "Fine for our most special and courageous customer." Sylvie looked at Russell, who nodded encouragingly with a proud smile. She took the bowl delicately and smiled. "Thank you very much. It's very beautiful." "No, thank you," Tom said emphatically. "And you taught us an important lesson about kindness, second chances, and about never judging people by their appearance." They were personally escorted to the best table in the restaurant, a round table near the large window, where the soft streetlight created a warm and romantic atmosphere. It was exactly the kind of table reserved for special celebrations. Sylvie ate her ice cream slowly, savoring every spoonful, while they waited for the main course. She smiled proudly whenever someone greeted her respectfully or waved from a neighboring table. "How do you feel being here again?" Russell asked, watching the expressions that crossed her face. "Completely different," she said, thinking carefully. "Find that horrible night. I was so scared of everything. Scared that Tommy would starve, scared that no one would ever help us, scared of being alone forever. And now, how do you feel now?" "Now I know I don't have to be afraid of anything anymore," she said with a confidence she hadn't had months ago. "Because I have you, I have a real family. I have a home I can always come back to." Tommy, in the special high chair next to the table, babbled happily and clapped his little hands, as if he completely agreed with everything his sister was saying. The dinner was peaceful and extraordinarily happy. They talked about Sylvie's new friends at school, about the first wobbly steps Tommy was trying to take, about the exciting plans for the upcoming winter holidays. They were completely normal conversations for a completely normal family, the kind of conversation Russell had dreamed of having for years of loneliness. When they finished the main course, Russell looked around the restaurant with a completely new perspective. There, at that specific table a few meters back, the most important and transformative journey of his entire life had begun. A journey that brought him back to real life, that gave him genuine purpose and unconditional love again. "Can I ask an important question?" Sylvie said suddenly, placing her fork on her empty plate. "You can always ask any question," Russell encouraged. "Are you really happy now? Truly happy?" Russell held her small hand across the table, looking directly into her eyes. "I'm the happiest person in the entire world, even having to take care of us every day. Even after losing your other daughter." The question was too deep and mature for a 6-year-old, but Sylvie had always been extraordinarily mature for her age, shaped by the difficult experiences she had faced. "Taking care of you isn't a job or an obligation," he said with complete sincerity. "It's the best and most important part of my life. And about Emma, I think she would be genuinely happy knowing that you helped me to love again, to live again." Sylvie smiled with that special smile she reserved for truly important moments. "I think your daughter Emma and my mom must be very good friends in heaven now. And they must be happy and proud seeing our family here, having dinner and being happy together." Russell felt his eyes sting with tears of pure gratitude. "I think you're absolutely right, daughter. I think they are very proud of us." When they left the restaurant that special night, with the snow falling gently and creating an almost magical scene, Sylvie walked with her head held high and her shoulders straight, holding Russell's hand with complete confidence. Tommy slept peacefully in his father's strong arms, completely safe and protected. They finally looked exactly like what they had always wanted to be, a complete, whole, and genuinely happy family. In fact, that's precisely what they were. A family that found each other in the most unlikely and dramatic circumstances, but that was absolutely real and true. A family built not by blood or tradition, but by unconditional love, by conscious choice, by the courage to believe that people can be saved and transformed. And sometimes, when you save someone with all your heart, you end up saving yourself too. That night, when he put both children to bed in their cozy rooms, Russell stood for a few precious minutes watching Tommy in his decorated crib and Sylvie sleeping peacefully in her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and books. Less than a year ago, he was a completely lonely man with no real purpose, just existing day after day without expectations or joys. Today, he was a dedicated father. He was family. He was home. He was future. All because of an extraordinarily brave girl who risked everything she had to save a complete stranger on a cold winter's night. Sometimes, true miracles happen in the most unlikely and unexpected places, and sometimes, saving one life can genuinely save 2 others. Or in this case, 3 completely transformed lives. Russell smiled, turned off the lights, and went to his own room, knowing he would wake up tomorrow to another day of family happiness. For the first time in years, he could hardly wait for what the future would bring. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.